Okay, welcome, welcome. Thank you for being with us tonight. We have a very special guest today. We have George Singleton with his newest release, You Want More. Do you want me to do the whole title? I can.
Yeah, that's all right. No, that's all right.
We're really, really excited to have you here tonight. How are you feeling?
I'm okay. I went out in public for the first time last week in 2.5. I mean, I've been to the grocery store and the liquor store, but I went out to a book signing thing, and I was nervous, and still am. So what the heck? I already had a little bit of anxiety in the first place, and now it's quadrupled. So
Well, it's gonna be a fun time. I'm gonna have fun. You're gonna have fun. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and let you dive into reading your piece, and then we'll talk. We'll have a little discussion right afterwards. Okay?
good.
Okay.
Y'all, I'm going to read the beginning for about 10 or 15 minutes of a short story called Show and Tell. I had been back in 1999 or thereabouts. I started reading a heck of a lot of this guy named Lewis Norden. And he writes a lot of like, when I was 12 years old or when I was 8 years old, my father, and I thought, yeah, I've never written a story like that. So I started writing stories like that. And I wrote a slew of them. And this one came out in the Atlantic Monthly. So when that happened, I went, oh, I'm going to write more like this. Anyway, this is the first, I think I'll read 3 sections of Show and Tell. I wasn't old enough to know that my father couldn't have obtained a long lost letter from famed lovers Eloise and Peter Abelard. And since European history wasn't part of my 3rd grade curriculum, I really felt no remorse in bringing the handwritten document on lined and hole punch Blue Horse filler paper, announcing its value and reading it to the class on Friday's Show and Tell. My classmates, who would all later grow up to be idiots in my opinion, since they feared anything out of South Carolina in general, and my hometown of 45 in particular, thus making them settle down exactly where they got trained, thus shrinking the gene pool even more. They brought the usual, starfishes and conch shells bought in Myrtle Beach gift shops, though claimed to have been found personally during summer vacations, Indian head pennies given as birthday gifts by grandfathers, the occasional pet gerbil, corn snake, or tropical fish. My father instructed me how to read the letter, what words to stress, when to pause. I, of course, protested directly after the dry run. Some of the words and phrases reached beyond my vocabulary. The general tone of the letter, I knew, would only get me playground taunted by boys and girls alike. My father told me to pipe down and read louder. He told me to use my hands better, and he got out a metronome. I didn't know that my father, a widower is what he instructed me to call him, although everyone knew how Mom ran off to Nashville and hadn't died. My father had once dated Miss Suber, my teacher. My parents' past never came up in conversation, even after my mother ended up tending bar at a place called the Merchant's Lunch on Lower Broad, more often than she sang on various honky-tonk stages, waiting for representation by a man who would call her the next Patsy Cline. No, the prom night and homecoming of my father's senior year in high school with Miss Suber never leaked out in our talks, whether we ate supper in front of the television screaming at Walter Cronkite or played pinball down at the Sunken Gardens Lounge. I got up in front of the class. I knew that a personal, caring, loving, benevolent God did not exist, seeing as I had prayed that my classmates would spill over their allotted time, et cetera, et cetera. And then we go to recess lunch and then sit through one of the mandatory film strips each South Carolina elementary school student underwent weekly on topics as tragic and diverse as friendship, fire safety, personal hygiene, and bee stings. I said, I have a famous letter written from one famous person to another famous person. Miss Suber held her mouth in a tiny O. Nowadays, I realize she held beauty, but at the time she was just another very old woman in front of an elementary school class, her corkboard filled with exclamation marks. She wasn't but 35, really. Miss Suber motioned for me to edge closer to the music stand she normally used on recorder day. And what are these famous people's names, Mendel? She asked me. Ricky Hutton, who'd already shown off a ship in a bottle that he didn't make, but said he did, yelled out, "My father has a letter from President Johnson's wife thanking him for picking up litter." "My grandma sent me a birthday card with $2 bill inside," said Libby Belcher, the dumbest girl in the class, who later went on to get a doctorate in education and then become superintendent of the school district. I stood there with my folded document. Miss Suber said, "Go on." I forget who wrote this letter. I mean, they were French people. Might it be Napoleon and Josephine? Miss Suber wore a smirk that I would see often in my life from women who immediately recognized any untruth I chose to tell. I said, "My father told me, but I forget. It's not signed or anything," which was true. Miss Suber pointed at Billy Gilliland and told him to quit throwing his baseball in the air, a baseball supposedly signed by shoeless Joe Jackson that none of us believed in, seeing as the signature was printed at best. We never relented on Gilliland, and later on he plain used the ball in pickup games until the cover wore off. I unfolded the letter and read, "My dearest." "These were French people writing in English, I suppose," Miss Suber said. I nodded. I said, "They were smart, I believe." I said, "I want to tell you that if I live to be 100, I won't meet another man like you. If I live to be 100, there shall be no love to match ours." The entire class started laughing, of course. My face reddened. I looked at Miss Suber, but she concentrated on her shoe. "That guy who wrote that 'How Do I Love Thee' poem has nothing on us, my sugar booger baby." "That's enough," Miss Suber belted out. "You can sit down, Mendel." I pointed at the letter. I had another dozen paragraphs to go, some of which rhymed. I hadn't gotten to the word throbbing, which showed up 14 times. "I'm not making any of this up," I said. I walked 2 steps toward my 3rd grade teacher, but she stood up and told everyone to go outside except for me. Glenn Flack walked by and said, "You're in trouble, Mendel Dawes." Carol Anderson, who's my 3rd grade girlfriend, looked like she was going to cry, as if I'd written the letter to Miss Suber myself. Miss Suber said, "You've done nothing wrong, Mendel. Please tell your daddy that I got it. When he asks what happened today, just say that Miss Suber got it, okay?" I put the letter in my front pants pocket. I said, "My father's a widower." It was a section break. My father waited for me when I got home. Like everyone else, he started off in textiles, then gave it up. I never really knew what he did for a living, outside of driving around within a 100-mile radius of 45, buying up land and then reselling it when the time was right. He had a knack. That was his word. For a time, I thought it was the make of his car. "I drive around all day and buy land," he said more than once, before and after my mother took off to replace Patsy Cline. "I have a knack." I came home wearing my book bag filled with math homework and an abacus. I said, "Hey, Dad." He held his arms wide open as if I were returning POW. "Did your teacher send back a note?" I reached in my pocket and pulled out the letter from Eloise to Abelard. I handed it to him and said, "She made me quit reading." "She made you quit reading? How far along did you get?" I told him how I only got to that part about Sugar Booger Baby. I said, "Is this one of those lessons in life you keep telling me about, like when we went camping?" My father taught me early on how to tell the difference between regular leaves and poison ivy the year before, when we camped out beside the Saluda River, far from any commode, waiting for him to gain a vision on which tract would be most saleable later. "Damn it to hell," he said. "She didn't say anything else after you read the letter?" My father wore a seersucker suit. He wore a string tie. I said, "She called recess pretty much in the middle of me reading the thing. This is some kind of practical joke, isn't it?" My father looked at me as if I had peed on his wingtips. He said, "Now, why would I do something like that to the only human being I love in this world?" I couldn't imagine why. Why would a man who, as he liked to tell me often, before my birth played baseball for the Yankees in the summer, football for the Packers in the winter, and competed in the Olympics, ever revert to playing jokes on a 9-year-old son of his? I said, "Miss Suber seemed kind of mad." "Did she cry? Did she start crying? Did she turn her head away from y'all and blow her nose into a handkerchief? Don't hold back, Mendel. Don't think that you're embarrassing your teacher or anything for telling the truth. Miss Suber would want you to tell the truth, wouldn't she?" I said, Probably." Probably she cried, or probably she'd want you to tell the truth?" My father walked to the kitchen backwards, pulled a bottle of bourbon from the shelf and drank from it straight. 20 years later on, I would do the same thing, but over a dog that needed to be put to sleep. I said, uh-huh. I told her you were a widower and everything. We got to go to recess early. My father kept walking backwards. He took a glass from the cabinet, then cracked open an ice tray. He put cubes in the glass, poured bourbon into it, and stood staring at me as if I'd told secrets to the enemy. Did she say that she's thinking about getting married? I said, she didn't say anything, Dad. I wondered if my mother stood before a group of men and women drinking house beer, if she sang I Fall to Pieces or Crazy or any of those other country songs. It wasn't but 3:30 in my father's house. There was a 1-hour time change, at least, in Nashville. Break. I've gotten a hold of a genuine Cherokee Indian bracelet and ring, my father said the next Thursday night. I ain't shitting you any on this one. Your mother's father gave me this a long time ago as a wedding present. He got them when he was traveling through Cherokee County up in the Cherokee country. Your grandfather used to sell cotton, you know. Sometimes those Indians needed cotton. They traded things for cotton. That's the way things go. I said, I was thinking about taking some pine cones I found. I'd gathered up some pine cones that were so perfect it wasn't funny. They looked like Christmas trees built to scale. I said I was going to take a rock and say it was a meteorite. No, take some of my Cherokee Indian jewelry, son. I don't mind. I don't care. Hot damn, I didn't even remember having the thing, so it don't matter none if they get broken or stolen, he said. This is a real thing. What could I do? I wasn't but 9 years old, and early on I'd been taught to do whatever my elders said, outside of drinking whiskey and smoking cigarettes when they got drunk and made the offer, usually at Sunken Gardens Lounge. I thought, maybe I can pretend to take my father's weird jewelry and stick it in my desktop. Maybe I can stick a pine cone inside my lunchbox. I said, yes, sir. I won't have it any other way, he said. Wait here. My father went back to what used to be my mother's and his bedroom. He opened up a wooden box he had fashioned in high school shop and pulled out a thin silver bracelet plus a 1 pearl ring. I didn't know that these trinkets once adorned the left arm of my 3rd grade teacher right before she broke up with my father in order to go to college, and long before she graduated, taught in some other school system for 10 years, and then came back to her hometown. I took the trinkets in a small cotton sack. My father told me that he'd come get me for lunch if I wanted him to, that I didn't need to pack a bologna sandwich and banana as always. I went to the refrigerator and made my own, and then left through the back door. Glenn Flack started off show and tell with an x-ray of his mother's ankle. She had fallen off the front porch trying to run from bees, something the rest of us knew not to do, seeing as we'd learned how to act in one of the weekly film strips. I got called next and said, I have some priceless Cherokee Indian artifacts to show y'all. The Cherokee Indians had a way with hammering and chiseling. My father had made me memorize this speech. I showed my classmates what ended up being something bought at Ray's Jewelers. Miss Huber said, let me take a look at that, and got up to take the bracelet from my hand. She peered at it and then held it at arm's length and said, this looks like it says Sterling on the inside, Mendel. I believe you might have picked up the wrong Indian jewelry to bring to school. Indian giver, Melissa Beasley yelled out. It wasn't a taboo term back then. This was a time, understand, before we all had to say Native American head penny. I said, I just know what my dad told me. That's all I know. I took the bracelet back from Miss Huber, pulled out the ring, and stood there as if offering a milk bone to a stray and skittish dog. Miss Huber said, I've had enough of this, and told me to return to my desk. I put the pearl ring on my thumb and stuck the bracelet around the toe of my tennis shoe. Miss Huber said, has your father gone insane lately, Mendel? It embarrassed me, certainly, and if she had said it 20 or 30 years later, I could have sued her for harassment, slander, and making me potentially agoraphobic. My desk was in the last row. Every student turned toward me except Shirley Ebo, the only Black girl in the entire school 4 years prior to lawful integration. She looked forward, as always, ready to approach the music stand, and explained her show and tell object, a face jug made by an old relative of hers named Dave the Slave. I said, my father has a knack. Maybe I said nothing really, but I thought about my father's knack. I waited. Miss Suber sat back down. She looked at the ceiling and said, I'm sorry, Mendel. I didn't mean to yell at you. Everyone go to recess. All right, that's the first 3 sections of that story that goes on about another 4 or 5 pages. And if y'all don't know what a face jug is, I bet you do. Here's one right here. That's a good one, made by Ms. Grace Hewell. All right. Kaylee, you all right?
Yes, that was great. Thank you so much. Okay, so I guess we'll go ahead and we'll dive into show and tell specifically because we're just reading it. Where did it come from? Is this, did a friend tell you a story? Did you just kind of one day was laying down and just started writing it? Where did show and tell come from?
Honestly, I know exactly. As a kid, I was so afraid to speak, like to do show and tell or give a book report or anything. My voice would go like this. I mean, that lasted till college, I really get scared. And one time I was doing show and tell. I wish I had this. And I was showing that I was born in Anaheim, California, and I went to the beach, as a little kid. I lived there for 7 years. My father's in the Merchant Marines. And I found this cool shell one time, like a kind of a conch shell. And I brought it to show and tell. And I showed it and said, I found this on a beach. I found this on a beach in California when I was little. And this guy named Tony Armistead, I remember, said, we passed it around and he went, I think this has some writing on the inside of it. I think you bought this somewhere. And everybody believed him, and I'm like, God almighty. I didn't say that. I was like 3rd or 4th grade. And that just stuck with me. I'm like a mule. I'll remember, if you go hit a mule upside the head, it'll wait 20 years for you to go walk behind it so it can kick you, And I'm kind of that way. So there was that. Some of those references like Shoeless Joe Jackson signature. Shoeless Joe Jackson lived up the road here in Greenville, South Carolina. After he played for the Chicago White Sox. He was illiterate. So if you had a signature by Shoeless Joe Jackson, any kind, printed, it would be worth $1 million. And Dave the Slave is a real guy from Edgefield, South Carolina, named David Drake. He worked in a print shop for a man, I forget who the man was. So he learned how to read and write. And he was a potter. So he started making pottery and he would write things. A lot of times it was Bible verses or something, but these Dave the Slave's pottery is worth $100,000 now. It's in museums all over. A favorite is a jug he made that underneath the handle it goes, Mr. Chandler says this handle will break. 1854, and the handle's still there. So, I just think about, when I'm normally sit down and write a story, I think, okay, put a character in an uncomfortable situation and see what happens. And for me, speaking in public was always an uncomfortable situation. And the whole childhood was an uncomfortable situation somewhat. So it was kind of easy and it just kind of flowed. that one really spilled out of me.
Yeah. I love that one. I think that's a really good one. I think just the idea behind like this, the boy not knowing the actual story that's happening, and he's just like keeps going and going, and you're just like, I wish you knew. I wish I could tell you why this is so embarrassing for you. I think that was great. So that's my favorite out of the short stories. What is your favorite one?
I'm not embarrassed by that story. When I write a story and I send it off, and maybe it gets published, maybe it doesn't, it's dead meat to me. So a lot of times people say, hey, that story you wrote, and they'll quote from it. I don't know what the heck they're talking about because I just don't remember. And that one, there's another one called This Itches Y'all that also has Mendel Dawes in it, but his buddy is telling the story about a guy who's in a documentary for head lice. So now his whole town thinks that they're not able to separate fact from fiction. I kind of like that story okay. And then there's the last story in the collection is a second person story called What Could Have Been. You drive here, there, and it's a short. I kind of like that one. Okay, man, what happened was, okay, I'm gonna just start talking, Kaylee. This is gonna be terrible.
That
Um,
was
an editor, the editor of this said, "Hey, it's time for you to have a selected." Hub City Books is here where in the town where I live, so I know these people. I've never sent to them because I thought, maybe they'll publish me just out of pity, or if they reject it, I might get mad. I doubt it, but they may be embarrassed or whatever. So Meg Reed, the editor, called me in and said, "It's time to do a selected. What do you think?" And a couple other publishers had asked me that. I'd always kind of said no. And I said, "Give me 24 hours." I called a couple buddies of mine, and my friend Ron Rash is a writer, and he said, "I'd do it in a second because Hub City's really flying. They're getting all kinds of press, New York Times, book review and all that. This thing got all kinds of good publicity." So Meg said, and I'm old, right? So I'm like 64. So but the day this happened, I guess I was 62. She said, "Okay, just get together like 30 stories that you like and send them to me as an attachment." I don't even save things in my, and I said, "Meg, some of these are written on a typewriter," which I had to explain what that was. No, not really. And I said, "I don't say," and then when they come out, they're different than ones I might, if I have it in my computer, it's going to be different than what it looks like. Let me just pick out 30 and retype the whole thing. I can type fast, like Rain Man. I can type very fast. So she said, no, we'll just scan them. And I was talking about this last week. You would think with, we've invented something that can shoot an asteroid out of the sky, but scanning just doesn't work. So they scan these 30 stories, and like lowercase L's look like ones, and lowercase I's look like lowercase L's, and sometimes quotation marks became a single quote. Sometimes at one point I had the word pom-poms, like, cheerleader pom-poms, and it came out porn, which I kind of like. I wanted to keep that. It took forever to proofread and proofread and proofread and proofread. And it's hard it's 300 some odd pages. It just took kind of forever. So I forget what the question was there, Kaylee.
That's okay. The question was originally like, what was your favorite short story in these
That's what I got into.
Yeah. Viewers, if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to put it in the QA feature at the bottom of your screen. I forgot to say that earlier. So I will be incorporating those questions throughout our discussion. So Randy actually said, "I trust you're able to get to this appearance more safely than the one last weekend."
Who said that?
Randy.
Randy Ford.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm home. I was talking to Kaylee earlier that so I was just driving. I don't, it's a long drive from Spartanburg, South Carolina to Nashville. So you go 26 and then get on 40. Everybody's driving like a maniac. People are texting. You can see them. And I was 30, 40 miles outside of Nashville. And I looked in my rearview mirror and I saw this car just weaving. I was like in a middle lane. There's a slow lane, passing lane. I was in the middle. And this happened to be a woman, just kept going like that. She'd come right up on my bumper and then back off and back and forth. And then bam, she hit me. And I was going 75 miles an hour and just started fishtailing like crazy. All the other traffic backed off. I got off on the side of the road. She got off on the side of the road in a little gold Honda. And I won't say what I said, but I let the expletives fly and went, "Are you a maniac? What are you doing?" I mean, she said, "I didn't see you. How did you not see me?" So and I said, "I've been watching your rearview mirror. You're driving like a crazy person." Blah, 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 blah. She said, she said, I got insurance. I'm well, good for you. I don't think your car's hurt none. So I went to look, and sure enough, the only thing on the back of my bumper was a gold streak from her car. And the front end of her car fell off on the side of the road. I mean, the grill and the right quarter panel just fell. And then she said, and she may have been 40 years old, she may have been 70, who knows, just kind of I just couldn't tell. Just an old country white woman. And then she said, "My son just died." Okay, well, I'm sorry. Maybe you shouldn't be out on the road. So this, oddly enough, Randy, is a little bit safer, Thank you for asking. Now, I tell you what, when I left Nashville, I left at 4:30 in the morning on Saturday morning. I took I-24 down to Chattanooga and then went to this town called Cleveland and then took the Ocoee Scenic Bypass. And it is a beautiful drive, but everyone's driving 35 miles an hour. So I didn't get home till a couple minutes ago. It took a long time. It was a long drive.
Okay, so the question is, well, do you see yourself driving back to Nashville anytime soon?
No, I will take a plane. I will find some way. I will build railroad tracks by myself and take a train there.
Okay. Okay. So now, you're saying that you're not going to talk about the explicitives that you said during that interaction, but how do you feel, or let me rephrase this. So there is profanity in the book, as we all know. How do you ever worry about the backlash you're gonna get about that? Because I've seen a few people are like, wow, there's so much cussing. And I'm like, but that, what makes the stories actually it makes it better. So do you ever worry about that?
I'm kind of surprised when people, I mean, there it said damn a couple times, but I guess that they're really upset with the F word, and golly, it's kind of the real world. People talk like that. I was talking about this in Nashville last week. I'm kind of proud of it. Right, every story is set in the South, and I read these books, and some of them are by my buddies, and they're set nowadays, and they're set in the South. They got a lot of white characters using the N word, and I go, "What? Come on, you don't need to do that." I kind of understand if it's 1940 or 1840 Mississippi, that people may talk like that, but I don't think it needs to be done. So I've never, in any piece of fiction, you can look, there's a way, I mean, I think I have a story where a guy says, it's kind of a true to life story. One time my parents went to church. We didn't go to church till we moved to South Carolina, and then we went Sunday, Wednesday, Sunday, Wednesday, Sunday, Wednesday. And one time on a Wednesday in 1965, so a lot of civil rights stuff was going on. And the preacher said, let's open it up to any questions y'all might have. And somebody said, what do we do if a black person comes in here? But he didn't use the term black. And when I wrote that situation, that's exactly how I did it. I see no reason to go ahead and we know what he said, and then my dad was walking on crutches at the time because he had fallen 45 feet. He got up on those crutches and we walked out of that church. And I had the opposite upbringing than most people. You know how most people, parents have to say to their kids, come on, go to church. You need to go to church. My parents, if I said, hey, my girlfriend wants me to go to church with, no, you're not going to church. A bunch of racists in church, don't go to church. And then I went to a Baptist college. Oh boy, that was a miserable time.
Okay, thank you.
If I cuss so much, if that, boy, that's how people talk, I think.
I think, yeah. I
heard a rap song lately? Come on.
So I know you said that your what's her name? Meg, I believe. Your editor who is like, okay, pick 30 stories. And so is that just always like a well-rounded number, was you were gonna have 30 stories?
I don't know why 30 came up for her, and I did. And my one problem is, I'm more comfortable writing in first person, but I know that 30 first person stories would be just horrendous. So, and I have published third person stories in second person. So I think this has, one or two second person stories, 9 third person, and the rest are first person. So, and then I just tried to put them in some kind of order. She had some other ideas, and that was fine by me. I don't care. She's the editor. She knows the product they want to put out. So the order I had them in changed a little bit. I think I had Show and Tell as the first one, and it ends up being not till page 147.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now we know where Show and Tell came from, and you have all these other short stories that are in there. For instance, the guy who's in the documentary. Where does something like that come from? Where are these stories even coming from?
I was talking to you about my buddy Ron Rash, and Ron always says that he has a vision of something. Like he wrote this novel called Serena, and he had a vision of a woman on, what was that noise?
My email. I just closed it out. Didn't realize it was open.
A vision of a woman riding a white stallion. So he wrote this novel, Serena. And I always say that I hear voices, like a voice will come into my head that just goes something like, I starred in a documentary about head lice. And then I'll just go with that. Usually that, I mean, that's what happens. Damn, every time. Oh, sorry. Ooh, cuss word. That's what happens every time. Um, so I finished a story this morning. Uh, it's a short, but I had this idea. The line was, I'll get to the line. It's at a funeral. It's after funeral. People are sitting around in this picnic shelter eating funeral food, and the widow says, "I am so proud of Arnold. He didn't have a drink or smoke a cigarette for the last 6 months of his life. He didn't eat red meat, and he stuck to his marriage vows the last 6 months of his life." And my narrator is looking back. He was like 13 years old there at the thing, and he's stuffed his face to see how many deviled eggs he can get in his mouth. And he yells out, "Wasn't Uncle Arnold in a coma for 6 months?" So, no wonder he didn't drink, smoke, run around on his wife. I had some other things in there too. I forget what. But that's the line that hit me was, my uncle Arnold lived a straight and narrow life the last 6 months because he was in a coma. That was the line that hit my head. It didn't show up till later on in the story. Yeah.
Huh. Okay. And so now, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've also written a novel before, right?
Two. Yeah, two.
Okay. So how is the writing process different from when you're writing a novel to writing these short stories?
In short stories, I enjoy it. In novels, which I don't do very well, and the first novel was called Novel, and the reason why I wrote it is because I was getting hounded by an agent and by an editor, more than one editor. You got to write a novel. Got to write a novel. I went, okay, a lot of expletives. I'll write a novel, and I'm going to call it Novel. The main character's name is going to be Novel, and he's going to be writing a long-winded poem, whatever. So, and it was kind of a metafictional thing. You kind of, if one knows Finnegan's Wake by Ulysses, it helps to understand novel. There's a bunch of allusions to that. So that came out. People either really hated it or liked it. Okay, I'm not fond of it. And then I had been writing a bunch of short stories that took place in a town called Gruel, South Carolina. And then I was writing a short story called Novel as a joke, but it just started ballooning and got 40 pages. That's too long for a short story. And then an editor at Harcourt called and offered just a big advance. And so I finished it. Then I had that story called that collection story called Drowning in Gruel, which had a bunch of the same characters that were in Novel the Novel. Okay. Then I wrote a novel called Work Shirts for Madmen. It's just kind of a normal, still absurd and supposed to be funny, I guess, but not as bizarre. But I get sick of my own voice, and that's my voice. So a novel, 300-page novel, it's bang, I just rather.
Okay. Do you find yourself having like your characters continue out through multiple of your your novels and your short stories? Like, do you see that still now?
Yeah, and sometimes it's because even now, even though I know better, now it's been a while, but 10 years ago, I go, okay, I'm going to try to write a novel. All right, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 8. This sucks. I hate it. Chapter 12. This is terrible. But I think chapter 2 is a good short story, and I think chapter 8. So you can go back through my books of stories and go, oh, that's that same character from the last. That's an abandoned novel that I just kind of plucked out and rigged it a little bit so it'd be a story.
Okay. So how many books in total have you written, and which one is your favorite as of right now?
Well, as of right now, it's You Want More. I mean, I like, okay. My least favorite is Novel, and Counting this book, even though it's kind of it'd be 13, you know, 13 books, a book of kind of writing advice, which has illustrations in it by Daniel Wallace, who wrote Big Fish. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Big Fish or read the novel. Both are great. The movie's made by Tim Burton. He illustrated it, and that was kind of goofy, and it was done on a dare. You know, a student said, "You ought to write this stuff you're always telling us." And I said, "Okay, I'm gonna write down everything I know." It came to like 3 pages, and then I, thought up more stuff.
Okay. And do you see yourself writing another novel in the future?
No, I don't, but
Okay. It could happen.
but I see myself not even writing anymore, more than I see myself writing a novel. You see what I mean?
Okay. Yeah, okay. Okay.
Stories. It'd be like,
Um,
you know what a tapas, not topless, tapas restaurant is, where you get these little bitty.
the tiny plates and then
Yeah,
you all like share 'em. Yeah.
I like those kind of places compared to a place where you go, "Ugh, eat this 7-pound steak, we'll give it to you for free." I mean, that's the novel. And I like the little tapas things where, ooh, a little lamb, a little piece of lamb, always a piece of parsley.
Okay. Okay. So I'm assuming your family has read your work, and specifically you want more. What do they say about it?
Well, I don't have much of a family. My mom and dad are dead, and I have no siblings.
Okay.
My mother, oh God. Okay. My dad was from Texas originally and ran away from home when he was 16 years old and joined the Merchant Marines. Maybe that's why I cuss so much. He told some filthy jokes. Anyway, my mother was from Michigan, and just kind of normal. Um, I didn't write in first person like I for a long time. I mean, I started really writing seriously when I was 21 or 22. I didn't write in first person. I had more professors say, "You're kind of funny a little bit. Why don't you try first person? Your voice is being, strangled by this third person crap." Um, I was so dumb. I thought, well, if I write in first person, people might think this is true, that it really happened to George. Um, but no one thinks that except my mother, who read a story and was like, "Oh my God, you got fired from your job and, had sex with a goat." And I went, "No, Mom, this isn't me. This is, somebody, a character I made up." Um, and I have a cousin who's God, I shouldn't say this. I have a cousin who's reads everything and laughs, but I still kind of hold back on family kind of secrets. I don't, this cousin of mine used to be head of Planned Parenthood for the East Coast until she got tired of bomb threats and resigned from that position, and then was head of the Kellogg Foundation for a long time. She's really smart and a good-hearted liberal person who's probably going to move to Canada real soon.
Okay. Okay.
I got
Um,
a little bit of a dry throat, and it just so happens that I have this Pabst Blue Ribbon here, so I'm going to drink. I hope y'all, in the 2 or 3 of y'all who are watching this, are having some wine or something.
we're having fun. It's a fun, relaxing conversation. So I'm okay. Since your family is, reading a lot of your writing as of right now, what about your friends? What do they say when they read, your newest release?
Yeah, sometimes they'll say, "Well, that's not how it really happened." And I go, "Yeah, it's because I made it fiction." If it's like my old college buddies getting together at Tybee Island or something like that, it didn't really happen that way. I know, because the way it happened isn't good fiction. You got to lie, you got to make it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So people have always been slightly supportive, unless they think I cuss too much.
Do you think that your writing fits your personality?
Yeah, I think I was a philosophy major, and I couldn't tell you, if you gave me a quote of Spinoza, I probably wouldn't know it. But I think that studying philosophy gave me a way to look at the world, and that's kind of how, and that's affected, most of my characters are. I think somebody like Jean-Paul Sartre, that his way of looking at the world probably affected me, because it's kind of us against them. Most of my characters are like trying to do the best they can, but things always seem to be working against them in some way, and usually, I hope, a funny kind of way. It all goes back to, that catharsis thing by Aristotle, and, when, what's his name, Oedipus or whoever stabs his eyeballs out, and you read it and you go, man, my life's been bad, but at least I didn't stab my eyeballs out. And this guy, I just dropped it, Samuel Beckett, said there's nothing funnier than human misery. And that sounds mean, but it does make us go, boy, she just fell down. Ha ha, because I didn't fall down,
Yeah.
Kind of mean, but I hope that when people read my stories, they go, I hope they get, okay, this guy's or this woman's marriage isn't so hot, but trying, or bad boss trying.
So do you think that is what makes a good story, is that we have to see like there is something downhill happening, but they are actively trying for it to be better?
Not always, I guess, but the ones I like Tim Gautreau's this guy who lives down in Louisiana. He wrote a story called Welding with Children, and he's kind of stuck babysitting these grandkids of his. One of them's named Nunu, and he's just trying, and his buddies sitting on the park bench in the town square making fun of him because the main character's daughter keeps having kids, spitting out kids left and right with different fathers. And they even say, like, here comes old whatever his name is, in his driving his bastard mobile, which is really mean, and we go, come on, you guys trying his hardest to take care of these little kids. Got a daughter who's didn't seem to be the maternal type.
Okay. So what was one of the most surprising things you learned about yourself, about your writing, while you're writing You Want More?
One of the most frightening?
Surprising.
Surprising. Sometimes I'll come up with a line and I sort of don't expect it. What was that one? Anytime a good line shows up and you go, where the hell did that come from? Where the heck did that come from? Because so it's usually some surprising about every story for me. Otherwise, it would be just dull to sit here and write. You just kind of wait and wait. Oh, that's a good line. Thank you so much, God or whatever. So there's that. I'm kind of surprised that I've continued, because so many people, I don't know how, when I was in graduate school, I think only 2 of us are really continued writing. A lot of people can't take rejection. You got to be kind of stupid to be a writer, because, if I were a lot younger, Kaylee, and I ask you out on a date, every week, want to go out on a date, Kaylee? No, I would quit asking. But as a writer, you go like, send it out, rejected. Okay. You send it out again, rejected. Okay. And you just keep going and going and going. And if you have really thin skin or something, you're just not you'll never make it. But if you don't, if you have thick skin and you just keep going, it's like that Persian saying that goes, the dogs may bark, but the caravan rolls on. You got people yipping all the time, yipping at you. What are you doing? I've had friends. There's a guy in that story named Bill Gilliland, a real name that I use. This kid one time told me when I was about 23, I said, I'm going off to get an MFA. And he said, MFA, that's stupid. You should get an MBA. That's where all the money is. Well, okay, buddy. But, that's what he's yipping at me about. And he went to Duke and Georgia Tech and is a manager of an auto zone now. I think I win, What the hell?
Okay, so then what is your advice for someone, for our, we have a lot of college students here and they're ready, they want to be a writer. What is your advice to them?
And what I did not do, but what I would do, what I didn't do until later.
Mhm.
I was not an English major, so I didn't really know. First of all, I went to school in Greenwood, South Carolina, so I only thought that I thought everything had to be really maudlin and sad, like Scarlet Letter, Wuthering Heights, all those Charles Dickens things. I didn't know you could be funny until I got to college. And of all things, it was a French professor who said, you may like Samuel Beckett, you may like this guy named Eugene Ionesco, whom I do love, Harold Pinter. So I read these playwrights. Um, I think it's important to know Faulkner, Flannery O'Connor, Eudora Welty, uh, Herman Melville. It's important to know that, especially if you're ever going to be on Jeopardy. But if you write like that now, you're not going to get published. You just won't. So the important thing is, I think, is go to that. I don't know, do y'all sell magazines or journals at Midtown Reader? Go in there and see if you got Story Magazine or uh, Southeast Review. It's I think out of Florida State. Or go to the library and look up these things and see what's being published today, and read contemporary writers. Because even now, when I go back and I go, well, no wonder these stories of mine aren't doing so hot right now, because I'm not writing like Kelly Link or a lot younger writers who are writing more. There seems to be a thing of magical realism coming back in a lot of younger writers, which I love. So that's good.
Okay.
Read more and write hard, and put on blinders and don't worry what people say.
Thank you. That's good. That's like that. So we know that most of your writing is humorous. It's funny. It has a funny aspect to that. Would you say that that is like your quirk about you when you're writing? It's like, I want my story to like make somebody chuckle or make someone like think or make someone laugh.
Yeah, but I think also that, especially lately, I think some of my stories are not all that funny at all. I think they're kind of sad, and I can see and not lately, last 10 years, let's say, and I can see it happen. Like sometimes I'll be reading a story in public, and people ha 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 ha, they're laughing, and then suddenly the story takes a little turn, and they go, oh, that wasn't funny. I wonder if I was supposed to be laughing this whole time, because a lot of times the humor is, things that we think are funny are sometimes sad for other people. So I think a lot of my stories maybe are turning a little bit, especially toward the ends of stories. They're going, oh, that's kind of that's not all that comical anymore. But I do want people to laugh. I hope.
Okay. So can we expect another short story series from you anytime soon?
Yeah, I got another book coming out supposed to be, I think, August of so a year. Oh golly, that's faster than that. It's called The Curious Lives of Nonprofit Martyrs. Nonprofit, like PROFIT. I never even thought about it. I said this the other day, and someone said like PROPHET. When I've never heard of a profit.
Yeah.
The Curious Lives of Nonprofit Martyrs. It's about a dozen stories, I think, and I think every story has someone working in some kind of made up nonprofit thing, like a United Way, but I make up some of these things.
Yeah. Okay, so the real question is, are you going to be making your way to Tallahassee in store?
Yeah, well, who knows? I'm so paranoid about the damn. I'm surprised I'm not wearing a mask right now in my own home. But I hadn't been out on a book tour, a big. I shouldn't say. Well, I had a book called Staff Picks. That's kind of when the pandemic hit, so I haven't been out. I didn't really go out for that one much. Right at the beginning, I did, and then this one, I've only done and I did a bunch of Zoom for the hardback of You Want. Zoom makes me just as nervous as being in public. Reason why is because one time before I ever did a Zoom thing, I was watching these buddies of mine who had books out, and they said, okay, I'll watch their Zoom and see how this goes. And it got Zoom bombed. and it was nasty. At first, all it showed like this dead woman on the side of the road, and then a guy who was really well endowed, and then just tons of like a dead cow. And I went, and everybody's flipping out because no one really knew how to do this virtual
Mhm.
stuff, like, how do we get off of this? And it scarred me for life, I swear. Luckily, knock on wood, this hasn't happened.
Okay. Yeah. Luckily we use Zoom webinar, so that's unless they have a special access, they can get into the panel view. Um, so we have the paperback and then we have the hardback, and you have two different covers. What made you decide to change the covers for them?
It didn't have to do with me at all. Here's what
Oh,
I have, I love I love both covers, but I love the hardback cover with all those dogs on it. And I guess some people think I'm like a dog. I had a story called Why Dogs Chase Cars, and I've written about dogs. I'm kind of surprised my dog hadn't shown up here. Um, so I like that one a lot. I think psychologically, what the press did is let's put a new cover on here, and maybe people will not realize they've already bought this book, so they'll buy it, and not know. But that's just my kind of pessimistic view of buying things in America.
okay.
I
Okay.
like I like both a lot. Yeah.
So I have one more question for you. This is how I typically like to end all of my Zoom interviews. If you can sell your story in one sentence and one sentence only, what would that one sentence be?
Sell my book, the book.
Yeah. Mhm.
Uh, wow. These are stories about human beings doing the best they can with what they got, and 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 the foibles that they must hurdle over on their way.
Okay.
Usually, tragically. I don't. I don't know. Hey, can you tell me this? Do you have a little button somewhere on there where people can buy this book? Like,
Yes. Mhm.
y'all please buy this book because Midtown Reader needs some new shoes. They need some money.
Thank you. Thank you. We need new shoes. Please buy, come by Midtown Reader, grab your copy of You Want More. You can order online. We'll deliver it to your house. We ship worldwide, nationwide.
Good, 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 good.
Yeah, so I think that is all that I had for you today. Do you want to say anything else before we close out today?
No, I'm fine. Thank you. You were a great, great host.
Thank you, George. It was so great talking with you. And let me know when the next book comes out and we can do this all over again because I had a lot of fun.
Oh, I'll try to. I swear, I'll do my best to come down to Tallahassee. Gosh, I don't know. I've been to like, what's that, Books on Books down in somewhere
Miami.
near Miami. Yeah, Coral Gables or someplace.
Mhm.
I think that's the only place I've been on a book tour. And I mean, I've been like at this book called Half Mammals of Dixie. I did 45 cities. I mean, and I've done, Massachusetts to Seattle and stuff, but Florida, I've not been sent there. I don't know. Maybe people know I just get in trouble.
Well, hopefully you will be making your way down soon. If not,
Yeah,
we'll do another Zoom one and I'll be here to talk with you.
Kaylee, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And I hope you have a great night.
Be safe.
Bye.
Bye bye.